Hi, so I wanted to provide just a general overview of the course since many of you are going to be taking an online class either for the first time or you've taken an online class in maybe a different type of environment. So I'm going to go through kind of just all the basics and hopefully try to make you feel a little bit better about what you need to do in order to get the kind of grade that you want to get. So I'm going to just kind of like probably repeat a few things just so that it kind of sinks in. I will be doing recordings like this pretty regularly, so fear not. So the main thing that you kind of have to remember is that the website that you see right there on your screen, that's like the main place that you need to be going to getting your assignment information. I cannot emphasize enough that if you had not gotten the book before the chaos began, it's really important for you to get the book. And again, that information of how to get the book is both in your Blackboard in the announcements, but it's also if you go to that same website I just talked about and you go to, it says ordering information, it'll tell you how to get it from the publisher. Some of you have emailed me with statements from the bookstore, and all I can tell you is that I don't have any relationship or power of influence over anyone at the bookstore. I've been ordering this same book for now 4 years. So some of these issues that they're reporting to you and that you're reporting to me, I've never heard before. I've emailed them, but like everybody else, they're busy with the millions of things they have to try to do. The easiest thing by far is to order from the publisher. If you're having just an extreme difficulty, then you need to email me and we can try to figure something out. But probably that thing will be harder than if you're able to get the book. It's also available on Amazon. So I think you should try whatever you can to try to get the book. You could probably get the book in a couple weeks and you'd be okay. But you're not going to be able to do most of the work. So you'll have to maybe start an extra credit project while you're waiting for the book. But just to be clear, the longer the course goes on, when we're talking like April, May, it will be nearly impossible for you to pass the class without the book. Now, again, if there's like a huge issue that's in your life that we can document and we can make an exception, then I can do that for you. But aside from that, get the book. The main thing you need to kind of understand about the book is that there's 3 major concepts in the book that you're going to kind of really need to master. So the concepts, just the theories, are identity, agency, and advocacy. Now, those phrases are explained in the book, and I will provide more information on what those phrases mean to me and my co-author, Helen Margaret Nasser. But it's probably more important that you think about it from your point of view. As far as the way that the book is broken up, it's a little bit different than a textbook, but not much. Instead of giving you information and then having you memorize that information and then, do some BS multiple choice exam that measures nothing, you have an inquiry question. So most of you have already done this, and we did this in the classroom. For those of you who are in the classroom with me, we're just trying to think about, what is the reason for injustice? I get pretty non-academic answers from folks, like, that's just the way it is, right? It is the way it is, the famous Brooklyn saying. That's fine to talk to people like that, right? But of course it means absolutely nothing. Why is the sky blue? It is what it is. How come I feel sick? It is what it is, right? This never makes any sense. So what we want to try to do is ask better questions. So we, instead of saying why is something, we start to say how does injustice happen in this particular situation? Or under what conditions can we change a situation from going from unjust to just? So you start with that inquiry question. I get you to try to think about some of these questions, and then we provide readings for you that answer that question. It's never going to be like, this is the answer, here's the formula. It's not a math class. It's going to be different points of view. So some people think that an injustice is when people are excluded based on race. Other people think an injustice is when somebody doesn't get to exclude somebody based on race. So we have to kind of think about why people start to make sense of the world through these lenses. So that's when we get to the discussion questions, where I start to get you to ask yourself, and by all means, talk to other people in your family, especially if you're quarantined in a building. right? Talk to other people in your family. Like, what do you think about this? Try to get to this idea of like, well, why are there multiple points of view about a particular issue, especially in the introduction in the first section. Then kind of the most important part of each section, at least to me, is this part called in reflection. Like, now that you've thought about your inquiry question, you've done some readings, you've tried to answer some of the discussion questions, hopefully you talk to somebody else, it can be social media. What do you think is going on here? And I try to give you like very specific, targeted in reflection questions. When you answer those on the online form, I'm really looking for like really specific information. So please, please, please do not give me general, it is what it is kind of answers. Try to say like, okay, in this reading, I understood this, and this seems to be happening today. And then always try to put like a because in there. Now, these don't have to be 2 paragraphs, right? These could be four sentences max. But I really just want you to be thinking deeply about it. So let's say, the inquiry question, you didn't think too hard about it, but you had a good question. The discussion questions, you maybe were a little bit knee-jerk. You're just kind of responding to it. In the in-reflection, take your time, right? Maybe write it out before you type in your answer. Now, I hear from students every semester that this reading is hard. And I know it's hard, but first of all, college should be hard. And second of all, these readings are readings that Helen and I selected that we thought would be good for you to read because students at NYU, at Harvard, right, at other schools, at John Jay, they're reading these readings. So I don't want you to be at a disadvantage if and when you transfer to another college because you are only reading textbooks, which, let's be honest, those textbooks are ridiculous. And so you need to be reading advanced information. So these reading comprehension quizzes serve 2 purposes. Number 1, they provide you with like kind of direct feedback, right? So you'll answer the questions and it'll tell you exactly whether you got it right or wrong. So if you get it wrong, you need to like go back to that reading. Okay, well, how did I misunderstand? For example, people pretty consistently get the holding, the decision, the thing that the Supreme Court decided to do in Scott versus Sanford, they get that wrong. Now, that's hard for me to understand, right? Because I think it's pretty clear what the Supreme Court did. But if you were rushing through that and you kind of thought things were one way, you might have missed it, right? So you want to read slowly, read carefully, and try to like get the context of the reading, like what's going on, who are the characters, right? What's the story? And then start focusing on like the words you don't know, right? Because a lot of times you'll be able to figure those words out. So those reading comprehension quizzes are really for you to see how you're doing with the reading. On the other hand, right? And normally I only have 25 students doing the online class. Now I have 100 and something students doing the online class. If 75 of you get the same question wrong, then I know that, there's a problem that's deeper than just the individual learner. And so that gives me a lot of information. Okay, let me go and make one of these kind of videos, right, that makes like more sense about that particular reading. Probably the thing you need to do the most then is like think about the legal terms, right? The language, because this is what, I'm responsible for teaching you before you transfer. And I also believe just for like public participation, you should know what these words mean, right? I mean, this is a constitutional democracy. This is constitutional law class. You should know these words. So focus on those words. And if you don't understand them, you can always look them up. Black Law Dictionary is better than Merriam-Webster, an online dictionary. You can also go to LII. Okay, that's the Cornell Legal Information website. Okay, and they'll give you more information. And remember, these are legal terms. These are not science terms, right? They're not religious terms. They're certainly not English literature terms. And so you're going to want to be, pretty specific. So then you want to think about like, how do these readings apply to injustice? So you're kind of constantly going back to your inquiry question and you're trying to see, okay, like now how can I apply this knowledge? Okay, I also have given you access to a second website. Bit dry, right? This second website is not required. I just think it's helpful. It's organized by section, and there's different videos and different media content that will kind of go a little bit deeper into the reading than the reading itself. One kind of prime example is the Brown versus Board of Education case. You're going to focus on the Dahl studies later in the semester, and there's a couple of videos that go into what the Dahl studies were. I think that's helpful. For the most part, the videos are pretty short. So it's not going to take a lot of your time, and I think it just kind of helps you get a little bit more into it. I'll keep adding things onto that as I think they're helpful. There's also ordering the book information if you're still struggling with that. And you see the website there is imagineonecivic.commons.gc.cuny.edu. This also connects to my YouTube channel. Like, this video is going to go up on the YouTube channel, right? I mean, I would love, please, right, subscribe to my channel, right? If you just kind of went to that channel pretty regularly, because there's a lot of information on there that kind of, even if it's not part of the reading, is still talking about law, talking about identity, talking about the Constitution. And so you can kind of put these pieces together. Now, I'll try to make them as interesting as I possibly can. That also will be true of my SoundCloud podcast, which is normally interviews that I do with people. I think I have one scheduled today. We'll see if it goes through. And I might try to do more of those, and I might try to do some kind of like distant stuff, friends that I have in California, et cetera, who now suddenly have a lot of time. And those are kind of the opposite of the YouTubes. The YouTubes are kind of like more about like as quickly as possible, as clearly as possible, hopefully with pictures, really trying to show like what do these concepts break down to. Whereas the SoundCloud podcast is more about deep conversations. And a lot of times this is something I don't get to do in the classroom because we don't usually have enough time, where we're actually having not really a debate, but a dialogue about these like pretty core concepts. So I'll be adding more and more content now that I've got time to do that. And so I'll try to respond to a lot of the things that you're talking about in the Google Forms and then emails that you send to me. I don't want you to obsess about grading. Now, some of your professors, teachers are going to obsess about grading. They've been instructed not to, but what can you do, right? I want you to think about grading in this sense, maybe in 3 ways. So the first way is I kind of say right here, this initial work for like the next 30 days is going to be mostly pass-fail. So if you do the assignment, right, you push submit, and I'll talk about that later, I get it, and you get the points, and that's done, right? And you don't need to worry about how many points, because those points are all going to add up to your assignments grade. So if you do the assignments, that's obviously going to help your grade. If you don't do the assignments, then I have to assume that there's something like drastically wrong with you, and we're going to have to figure out like what's going on. But if you just want to like do the assignments, keep up with your work, you're getting the points. So don't stress me out. Don't email me constantly like how many points do I have? Don't do that. I will get in touch with you if there's a problem. This is like for the reading quiz next week, and then the reading quiz after that, and the midterm. This is mostly just to see, like, are you capable of doing this work in a timely fashion? I understand that you very likely have 3 or 4 other classes and that this is a very stressful time. So I'm not trying to really do too much in the next 2-3 weeks. I want to just see how are we all doing? Are we getting through this work? Towards the end of the semester, assuming that everybody's kind of getting the hang of this, then we'll do harder work, right? The exam will be harder. The final paper will be a little bit more detailed, and I'll go way into detail based on how things are going. So I want to make that clear. I'm going to change things based on how the majority of the class is doing as far as like the work. There will be extra credit, and I will probably start the extra credit process soon. I'm going to think about it for a couple days, try to see how many different extra credit assignments can I do. These will be like more research-based, probably something to do with what's going on today. There's a lot of interesting like decisions that are being made that are in direct violation of the Constitution. There's a lot of people fighting, like the mayor and the governor are, bickering about whether we should do the stay-in-place thing. You've probably seen the Trump and Governor Cuomo are bickering. This is how democratic governments work or don't work. And so, there's probably going to be an extra credit assignment, like trying to think about this and process it because I think it's good for you. But it's also a really easy way to apply our knowledge. So you want to think about like just these assignments that's just getting you points, right? And so if you get your points, then I basically don't have to worry about you. If you're not doing the assignments, then I have to worry about you. So when I have now 130 students all online, that's a lot to try to manage. So I'm just going to throw that out there. So I cannot be constantly telling you how many points you have. It's just impossible. It's physically impossible for me to do that. So I have to focus on the students that are, struggling, and then I will get to the students who are, doing their work consistently. I just put a picture here just to kind of show you, like, towards the end. This is more or less what we're looking at. Okay, so I don't want, again, I might change this, but I'm just saying, like, this is probably, most likely, assuming that everything kind of calms down, what we're going to be doing. So you're going to have a final paper. It's not like a research-based paper. It's more of like applying the readings to like your brain and having you think about it, and talk to me about how did this identity agency advocacy thing really like affect you, and what's it going to do as far as your future. I want to look at a piece of student work just to kind of show you like 4 different answers, and we can kind of analyze them together. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, looking at this, but the question is pretty simple, and this is one you're going to answer if you haven't answered it already, right? How does the process of labeling help explain the difficulties people have in expressing their interpretation of constitutional rights? Now, if you've taken Intro to Criminal Justice, you should have learned about the labeling theory. If you haven't taken the criminal justice, you can hop on Google and put labeling theory, and I don't think it's going to be shocking to you when you figure out what the theory is. But I provide a couple examples right in that very beginning of the book about how labeling kind of operates, how it works between people and among people, and what that has to do with power, right? Notice how the person with power is the one who's labeling the powerless person. So we want to think about, like, what does that do to the person's mind and their behavior? How do they respond to that labeling? Sometimes people respond, angrily. Sometimes people are calm. Sometimes people just do what they're told, right? So we want to know what kind of contributes to that difference. And then we want to think about how does that lead to their interpretation of what they think rights are and what the Constitution is. So I think this first answer and the last answer are strong A+ answers. I think the idea that you need to look is like the stigma of being labeled by society can be overwhelmingly devastating. Correct, right? That's what I'm trying to get at here, is that when we start thinking about our identity, how we're treated by others can very much influence that identity. Then I think this like last answer, number 4, is pretty great because it draws in the reading. So I think it's kind of even better than the first answer, right? When we're seeing the difference, we're comparing and contrasting the way that Antonin Scalia, the former Supreme Court Justice, the way he's using this concept of originalism is about himself to include himself and to include people like him. Whereas Raven is expanding her identity. She's saying, I'm not going to be reduced to a single thing. I'm not going to be in an included group. I'm going to expand myself and try not to exclude anyone. And I think this is a correct saying. I believe she is thinking more freely. I think that is true, right? That's an exercise of kind of not just resistance of power and law, but also the construction of power and law. So she's participating in what she thinks law is. That's where I'd like you to get by the end of the semester. But we'll see kind of how you all deal with that individually. I'd say, like, because people just want to be normal, and by labeling, you're telling them that they are not, that's not a great answer. So you need to think a little bit deeper and try to provide some specific information. The process of labeling is a way of stereotyping someone without knowing them or giving them a chance to express themselves or even protect their rights according to the Fourth Amendment. Like when I read that, I thought, what? Like, as Dr. Chapman says, that's a great answer to your question, but I don't see any part of that answer that's answering my question. So to me, this is like, the old person at like a holiday dinner, and they just kind of ramble. Nobody's really sure what they're talking about. So don't ramble, and try to be specific, and definitely try to apply the readings, right? Like, make it clear that you understand that the readings relate to this question. Again, you're not going to get your final grade based on how you answer the discussion questions. That's going to be more about, like, how are you processing the information so that you're capable of doing the paper, that you're capable of doing the final exam. And really, you really shouldn't be doing extra credit if you can't do this. So again, I just wanted to look at 4 answers so you can kind of see, like, what am I saying, right? This is what I have to deal with, and now I have to deal with 120 plus, students. So the better your answer can be for me, the better it is for you. And also, I think that second one, to be perfectly honest with you, I mean, it looks like it could be easily copied from some other website. And it's, those answers aren't great. That's why they're on the internet for free. I'm giving you my Gmail, which I normally do, but the Kingsborough email is tough to work with already, and then in a situation like this, it becomes impossible. So just email me at Gmail. It's just so much easier. Just so much easier. You have to be, some of your questions that I've tried to respond to everybody so far that's emailed me, not today, right? Today I've been working on other things, but I'll try to get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Some of your questions are super easy to answer, and I can answer you in like a sentence or less. If I'm short with you, don't take that the wrong way, right? Don't misinterpret that as like I'm mad or something. I just have like 1,000 other emails I have to get to. So the quicker I can answer your question, I think the better for both of us. Some of your questions will require a longer response time. I'll have to look things up. I'll have to try to help you, work through some difficulties. If I don't get back to you for some reason, right? If it's like 2 days, 3 days have gone by, just email me again. It's entirely possible that your email gets lost. So I'm just going to keep saying this over and over. 120 plus students are going to be emailing me at any given moment, plus all the other people that exist in my life, plus all this other stuff I have to do, plus all, the annoying people at Kingsborough. That just kind of goes like, don't email me asking me if I got your assignment. If you push that submit button, I give you a little picture right here on the right. I get it. Like as soon as you push submit, it goes right to me. It goes right into a spreadsheet and I've got your answer. I wish that it did a little dance and like made a song and like told you like, hooray, good for you. But that's Google, right? I don't have any control over that. The reason I use Google Forms is because it's so easy. So you push the button, it goes right to me, and then it's just really easy to go through your stuff. So don't worry. Again, like I'm going to keep reminding you. I will give you feedback, but at the beginning, it's going to be kind of negative. Like, what's going on? Are you alive? How can I help you? Right? Do you have the book? Like that kind of stuff, just to make sure that you're on the right page. Towards the second half of the semester, I can give you like really specific feedback. I can say, look, I saw 3 of your answers, and this is what you're doing well. So keep that up. Try and think about it this way. And I think that's better feedback than, hey, you have 13 points. So I am not going to keep track and alert you to what you did. You should know what you did, right? That's kind of common sense, right? Did you do it? Then you know you did it. So if you need to, make yourself like a little checklist. That's a good idea. Do that for all your classes. It's going to be hard to manage all your classes. I feel for you. I put these 2 things down here because in 2012, I was teaching at Kingsborough during Hurricane Sandy, and I wrote a chapter in response to that. And what I saw was that a lot of teachers just threw a bunch of new technology at a lot of students thinking, oh, you guys are young, so you'll be able to figure it out. Well, first of all, not all students are young. Second of all, not all students have 24/7 access to technology. Third of all, not everybody can pay their bills. A lot of people are losing their jobs right now. So I think, I'm trying to give you the easiest form of technology that I'm aware of, that I can, for some of you who have never used this, that I can help you with, right? This is something I can explain to you, that I can show you through pictures and through videos. There's a lot on YouTube that I can kind of send to you, so feel free to use me as an ally. I will check in with you. So I'm not saying like I'm not going to talk to you and I'm not going to give you any information. I will check in with you. But like I said, you have to imagine I have a spreadsheet. It's going to have 120 plus names on it. And I'm going to have to get back to you one at a time, right? And there's only 24 hours in a day, and I've got to sleep for some of them. But I just wanted to kind of remind you, I've been through an emergency before. I know how to handle it, and I can help you through it. So you don't need to worry, at least about this class. I can't promise what other teachers are going to do. So I wanted to just like 2 more slides just to kind of give you maybe a positive side of life. These are my goals for you, even in this environment. I want you to see that you have an identity. And I'm not saying this like you didn't have an identity. What I'm saying is that there's an identity with law, that the law, right? And we're going to break that down as a tool for social justice. But this is something that can either negatively affect you, positively affect you, have no effect on you yet. It's not something that's easy to really think about, and a lot of people don't think about. And certainly a lot of your classes haven't talked about this. as a upper level class, 66 and 67, I'm trying to get you ready for like harder stuff. So if you transfer to John Jay, you're going to be dealing with this a lot, and they will have assumed that you've already thought about this. So that's one reason why I've kind of linked identity to law. Another is that it works within my own research. So I'll be bringing in that kind of research in the stuff that I do. And so you're kind of joining me and thinking about this. And, we're at the forefront of law. We're thinking about stuff that they're thinking about at Harvard, that they're thinking about, at the University of Rome, places that are really, really interested in these questions. So I think that you're capable of thinking about these things. And I've had that kind of success with students in the past. So that's one goal I have for you. I also want you to believe that social change works, not so much in Santa Claus, but it has worked, right? And so I give you many examples in the book of where social change has changed, social change has occurred through the law or with the law. I mean, the most famous is the civil rights movement, but there's a lot of little examples that, even in the Scott versus Sanford case, pretty rapid change occurred because of that case. And so it at least put people on guard or on notice that this was unjust. I want you to consider advocacy with the law. So protesting is fine. Sharing information on social media, I think is almost useless, but it's fine, right? It's an activity that has almost no harm, assuming that it's not false information. But advocacy is different. Advocacy is participating with a legal movement, right? So if I'm telling you that change works, but people need to join that change if they want to participate in that change, right? You can't expect that change is going to happen and then it's going to happen to you. You have to be a part of that change. That's a pretty famous saying, but it's also common sense. And maybe, when you're participating in legal mobilization or change, and you share information with your network through social media, sure, those things working together can probably change. But, you see all the time, somebody says, some koala bear has died in Australia. Donate $15 on my social media campaign for my birthday. You didn't save any koala bears. So, unless you're going to participate in the banning of the hunting of koala bears, right, and really actually participate in that, then just that one thing isn't going to change. So this is what I mean by advocacy, is not just showing up to a protest, but it's also joining this movement, like participating in this change. And this goes for any point of law, right? You could be a radical conservative Republican, and this would still be true for you, right? Like whatever is important to you. Point there is it's not just for liberal progressives, in other words. I need you to think about moving beyond the law as simply obeying it. And I'll get into the different reasons for that, but law is not perfect, and it's not even really ideal for everyone. And so just simply obeying blindly, can get you into a lot of trouble. So then you need to see law as also resistance and a construct, and I'll get into that a lot. But if you look at this image to the right here, this kind of idea is like, well, when you live in a participatory democracy like we do, with a constitution that gives you certain rights and creates a certain structure, you need to learn how to act like a government in order to get treated with respect, to have power. So part of that is this whole concept, and I'll get into all this ancient Greek at another time, but, jurisdiction is not just like a border or a boundary, right? It's this like ability to speak law. So you can't really enforce the law, administer the law, practice the law, unless you can speak the law. And so this is what you need to be able to resist unjust laws in order to speak law. So you need to understand what the law is, and it's not just simply doing what you're told. And so we'll look at like how humans kind of participate in this process in democracy, or the demos, in creating a jurisdiction. And then we'll talk a lot about the constructs of the institution of law, like courts, the instrumentalities of how we use the law. That could be policing, that could be judicial decisions. And then the ideologies about law, or like what law kind of creates in people's minds as far as an expectation. One of those being like obey, right? Some people clearly obey, and then some other people who, choose they don't want to obey. So what makes those mental models, right? Like it's not just the words, in a piece of legislation or a bill or a law, right? It's like, what's your family environment? What's your social status? How much money do you have? These things all kind of like influence this. So I'm looking for you to make an individual contribution by thinking deeply. This is not a class where you read something, answer the question, you're done. Pat on the back, good for you, right? I don't think you learn anything in those classes. Those are like the laziest teaching classes, right? I don't think the students are lazy. I think some teachers are lazy. I need you to like really think about these ideas. These are important concepts, especially in these times. And so spend some time thinking about it. Again, talk to your family. Kids are geniuses about these things, right? They are inherently smart about what's fair and not. Talk to people through the internet, on the phone, text, right? Like, see what other people have to say. The more you can kind of expand your way of thinking about this, the better. So I just want to end, right, by looking at this website once again, memorize it, right, save it, whatever you need to do. Just come here, right? I'll do questions and answers. It's a lot easier to answer your questions like 10 at a time than it is to email you over and over again. So the Google Forms, one of the Google Forms, there's the third one that you completed, has a lot of questions in there. And a lot of them are redundant. So I'm picking one question here on the upper right, just so that you can kind of understand how I'm going to do this. Probably 12 to 15 people asked this question. So let me just get right to it, right? This is not an error, right? This is you're getting the error message because I don't want you to do this question yet, right? It says March 23rd. So it won't open up until March 23rd. And that's going to be true for most of them. As we move forward, I can start to let you get ahead, but I can't let people get ahead right now. It would just be absolute chaos. This does not mean that you can't get ahead in the readings, right? You can get ahead in the readings. I mean, you see what the questions are in the discussion questions. You can start writing these out and then just type them up, right? So I'm not saying that you can't move forward. I'm saying I can't process your answers. There's no way I could be able to do that. So this would be like, I'm going to be pretty simple in the assignments and the way that you get them. So if you have classes that are a little chaotic, right? Like people who are trying to hold classes at the same time that you had class, to me, that, wow, that's insane, right? Focus on that class. I mean, that's going to be tough. You could always do this class at 11 p.m. on a Saturday. I think like the more you kind of get into a rhythm and form a habit here, the easier it will be. So, my class will be consistent. So whatever you need to do outside of this class, I would try to do that. And I can work with you about it. I might do Zoom video chats. I just need to think about how to schedule that, right? Because that could be the challenge. So if you don't know what Zoom is, please download that app. I probably could do a Google video chat, but we'll see. Okay, I'll keep you updated on that. I might do guest podcasts, so I might have people participate in making podcasts with me that will kind of talk about the same things that you're talking about. I will make lots of videos. So I'll do stuff like this pretty regularly that goes through each of the readings. I hope they'll be shorter. I'm covering a lot of information as quickly as I possibly can. So I'll try to make them like 10, 15 minutes. I will have lots of extra credit. And these will be, again, like I said, kind of based on the research I'm doing and also on stuff that maybe you're interested in and probably something to do with how the government is responding to this pandemic. For the first 10 days, starting tomorrow, I really need to concentrate on just making sure that people are participating in the work. So we're going to call this attendance, but this is in no way the same thing as attendance in the classroom. And I have no idea what your other teachers are telling you. But we've been instructed to just, attendance is about participation. So it's not about do you show up online at 3 p.m. every day, right? It's about, are you doing the work? So that's how I'm going to treat attendance, right? Like if you're doing the work, then you're getting your attendance. If I don't hear from you in the next 10 days, if you haven't done a single assignment, I'm going to email you. I'm going to see where you are. We're going to have to try to figure that out at some point, but that's what I'm going to be thinking about for the next 10 days. I'll be making these videos, answering questions, and trying to track students down. Okay. So if you're having a problem, don't suffer in silence. Don't hide. Email me. And so that we can kind of like get started and get you onto a path. So I give you a little picture here of just like kind of what we're doing in next week. So you should start doing the reading, Scott versus Sanford. You're going to do that in reflection. Remember, you're going to think deeply about it. And then you're going to take the reading quiz. And it's not going to be hard. It's going to be pretty simple. And then there's a video lecture there that's going to talk about constitutional interpretation. I'll kind of be just doing that kind of a format as you go forward. Okay? So I hope everyone is safe and sound. Take your time. Make sure that you're prioritizing. Make sure you stock up on food, like all the things you're supposed to do, right? And just, try to do the best you can.